and welcome to our latest Periphery Tech Talk podcast. I'm joined by George Maddox, our solutions architect. I'm Leanne Tomlin, marketing director. Welcome, George.
Hello. Hi, Leanne.
Hello.
How are you well?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
I get by.
Good. So this episode, we're going to be talking all things LTO. So we're going to be discussing the challenges of relying on LTO storage for your broadcast and post-production workflows. And then we're going to be exploring how a more modern integrated storage solution could enhance efficiency, security, and collaboration. So George, just before we get started, do you want to do a brief introduction to yourself?
Sure, yes. Obviously, George Maddox. I'm a solution architect here at Periphery. I focus primarily on the pre-sales run, which is obviously building great solutions for our customers with a view to the place where the market is, but also where the market is going. And I have a background in view-on-demand distribution as well as building solutions for post-production houses. I used to sell a non-linear editor. So a wide span of knowledge, perhaps a jack of all trades, master of none, but that's useful sometimes.
Excellent, thank you. So we'll get started really. So firstly, let's just discuss the common issues associated with LTO storage in your view. What do you think those are?
Yeah, sure. So I think just to open things up, and to sort of maybe acknowledge the elephant in the room, right? Let's be mature. We are competitive with LTO, right? So, if anyone is tuned in here and thinking, oh, I'll get a really impartial view of LTO, that might not be quite how we go about it because we're selling in opposition to it. But I think there's still enough going on in this industry for us to say, look, it's horses for courses. Some things are right for some customers and some things are right for other customers. And I think, to be honest, the main theme of what we're going to be talking about today is less one is good and one is bad. It's more going to be a case of there is room for more of this, and usual practice does not necessarily correlate with best practice, right? And we are an industry beset by challenges at a global level and at a macro level. And let's just all take a step back and think about what we're trying to achieve and the best tool for the job. And with that in mind, let's be candid, and I don't think anyone who sells LTO would disagree with this. It's such a generic comment. LTO is great on a price and efficiency level, right? You get a lot of storage for not a lot of cash, yeah. But there's no two ways about it. It's slow to recall that content, right? Because it is physically on a location in the tape that needs to be accessed by the machinery around the tape. And what that means is that you've got downstream from there, A, speed issue recalling what's on it, and B, a challenge when you integrate systems into it because the system physically has to account for the fact that it needs to pull the data from a certain part of the tape. And as soon as you're coding around delay, and that delay being a non-standard amount of time, yeah, you have a challenge. So to sort of bring this in line with my own personal experience, I used to work, like I used to say, in view on demand. We used to have a huge pool of content, and some of that content was stored on what I would call performance storage, from which it could be transcoded, shared, accessed, viewed. And then there was a pool of content storage, which I remember to this day having to access, that was stored on the LTO. And candidly, if you were trying to run a job, if you were trying to do something, you saw it was on the LTO, you thought, oh, hell, it's on the LTO. I'm going to have to leave that for now because otherwise I'm going to sit here and wait for it to come back, then find it's the wrong file. Then I'm going to have to get another one, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I'm not saying that that's intrinsically about LTO. It might just be that that company had some challenges in the way they'd done it. But at a really fundamental level, that slowness, right? That, oh, we've got to get it back from the LTO, is a challenge that you might not even see if you've been the person who purchased it. But I do feel that a lot of your jobs that are sat there on the LTO will fall into the category of, I'll do it later. It's my job for the end of the day. I'll leave it running overnight, right? In my head, probably the better analogy for it is sort of all the stuff you put in that one drawer that most people have in their house that you don't want to get rid of it, right? But you also don't know when you're going to need it next. So you just kind of shove it in the big drawer with all the other stuff, and it's full of It's a full of Allen keys from IKEA furniture, right, and bits of tape and the manual for that phone you had years ago, right? And you never chuck it out because you might need it, right? But again, just to extend the analogy, any job you need to do around the house that requires that happens last because you think, oh, I've got to go through the drawer. Now,
Mm,
why does that matter? Well, I'd argue that it matters because, we're moving in a world of fast channels now. We're moving in a world of more content. All the major streaming services need more content. They need more offerings. They need more people to give them more money because we're getting less money per unit, right? People are buying less DVDs. They're buying less transactional video on demand assets. You've got to put more and more content out there, and that content has to be marketed and sizzle reeled and all of the rest of it. You
yeah.
can't afford for a huge body of your content to be in that category of like, oh, we could grab it, but it's stuck in the LTO bottom drawer, if you like. And I
Mhm.
think that's, again, like I say, we're not saying you don't need that bottom drawer, right? There are some times when you need it, right? Your nature programs. We see huge amounts of LTO on nature programs, and I get why nature programs get put on there because it's a static camera on someone's roof that's been running for 72 hours in the hope that a specific bird flies past, right? That really isn't. You wouldn't want to get rid of it because who knows? Maybe the
Yeah.
bird did fly past, right? But it's very much the bottom drawer just in case.
Mhm.
Whereas the sizzle reels for some TV show that you thought was never going to be interesting or useful again, well, as soon as that gets put on a fast channel because the kids want to watch, an entire day's worth of Diagnosis Murder, yeah, well, maybe the sizzle reels for Diagnosis Murder are useful, yeah,
Mhm.
and you want to know where they are, you want to find them, you want to get them back quickly, and you also want to check them quickly because they might not be, because they might be in the wrong format, etc., etc. So hopefully that gives a bit of a sense, Leanne, of what we're saying with this. Look, we're not saying it's not needed, and in fact, we interact with it with us in the product stack. We acknowledge it, but what we're saying is only use it when you're really, really sure that that is a bottom drawer, once in a blue moon, I need it type asset. Don't just shove everything in there and hope for the best.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. And even if you are storing your content in LTO and you need to access a certain piece of content because you want to find, like you said, I've got 72 hours worth of, you know, footage, and there's one thing on that piece of content that I need to find. You've still got that sort of laborious task then of going through that piece of content to try and find exactly what it is that you're
That's right.
looking for, which is also, quite inefficient.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
a great use of anybody's time to be doing that. And so, yeah, I think that's also probably, another challenge. But I can understand why, there is content that you want to keep, but you don't necessarily need to access, but you can keep it just in
Yeah.
case. Um, yeah. So moving into, sort of looking at then uh, a modern storage solution. And again, also as well, this conversation is probably more focused around, we recognize that there is a need for LTO, but also you can add a modern storage solution into your workflow as well.
Yeah.
So what would be the advantages of doing that?
Uh, I mean, look, so the core thing I would say is before you put it away, make sure you've fully got a sense of what it was. Um,
Mm,
and then when you have put it away, make a record of where you put it away and give yourself a nice friendly interface to get it back from, right? Now, obviously, you say, well, that's the media asset manager. Yeah. But obviously, media asset managers come and go, and you change your media asset manager on a regular basis or your CMS or whatever else. What we would advocate for Object Matrix is that you essentially keep the core and fundamental knowledge of your assets at a storage level. So the Object Matrix storage stack takes the metadata associated with the video and places it next to the video itself, and it makes that viewable to a user through a system called Vision. Yeah.
mhm,
Now, just to be very clear, this is not a MAM per se, or it's probably just the best file system you've used, right? It's a file system on steroids, if you like. It takes the video and the metadata and places it next to this.
mm,
Our way of suggesting that you work with LTO is that you ingest into a pile of our object storage. Yeah. You leverage all the benefits of vision. You leverage the metadata being stored next to the video. You leverage the video potentially being scanned by either our automation or our AI tools. You can log timecode based metadata against the video asset. You can preview the asset, having created a proxy of it. You can play back and subclip certain sections of the asset. Essentially, everything you would want to do with the asset can be done within the vision and on the object matrix storage. Additionally, though, the object matrix storage, although it is not say performant enough to edit from, right? Because that's a different tier of storage altogether. It is certainly performant enough to transcode from, for example. And because it has a nice GUI associated with it, you can share files into it via, let's say, our integration with Signiant, and share files out of it via that, or just share files without file acceleration in and out of it. And then from there, you can write off to your LTO storage. So if we think about all those things that we said we make possible on that object storage layer that you put in, all of that is helping you, A, build a picture about what is useful and not. Yeah, whether that be through the AI scanning it and saying, in this episode of Thunder in Paradise, Hulk Hogan says something funny and he's in the news. Yeah. And now we want to grab that for our social media team, for example. A bit of an esoteric example, but you get my point, right? That data is contained at a storage level in the object store. You might then choose to say, well, I'm going to write that high resolution off to the LTO tape because actually Hulk Hogan's not in the news that much, but at least you have a trackable record, yeah, of what you did and where you placed it. Additionally, yeah, if it stays on our storage, the object store, if suddenly Hulk Hogan becomes big news, you can subclip directly out of it, you can share directly out of it, and people, third parties, can share into it as well. So the sort of the vision we're trying to sort of put in place here is that, yes, you do need your bottom drawer, right? But you also need, yeah, your workbench, which is full of tools that you use on a quasi-regular basis, yeah? And then, of course, you have your workshop, right, where everything works. But you still need that interim step. And that interim step should ideally be highly performant for an archive, and that's a lot of what we see with some of the supply chain challenges we solve are around things like nature shows, which we just solved, where the footage comes in, is immediately written off to LTO, and then is shared around on the LTO tape, and everyone just accepts a delay, if you like. Well, it's got to be written to the LTO, and then it's got to be retrieved from the LTO, so we don't see our footage for a fortnight. And what we would say is, well, no, that don't accept that. Yeah. Because that material needs to get out there. For all you know, that's the killer piece of material. That's the sort of the first sighting of I can't do birds, Leanne. I don't know a good bird. Imagine a good bird, a really exciting bird, a hummingbird. It's the long lost sighting of the wildest hummingbird you've ever seen, right? Your social team want that out now. They don't want to be waiting for the LTO tape to go to the library and come back. And if you're ingesting into our storage first and then writing off to the LTO, then you are absolutely. I mean, look, if you want to, don't write to the LTO at all. We'd highly advocate that, right? But at the end of the day, if you have brought it into us first, you have a malleable level of control over it. And that control might just be for you, right? But it also might be for a third party as well. There's nothing stopping you giving third party access to our storage as well through the internet, you see. So what we're really advocating for is not that you would stop using certain technologies, but that you would acknowledge that the world is changing, that even when previously we might have thought of things as shoot, edit, finish, sizzle, market, and this lovely long linear chain. We're now getting to the stage where it's shoot, bit of marketing, bit of sizzle, borrow from this, borrow from that. And also that it isn't all happening in one facility or one site, that it has to be open to the world, And I should just say, sorry, we're obviously talking about LTO today, but it's worth being clear that this is everything we're saying here today applies to something like Glacier as well. Something like Glacier or whatever the Azure deep storage is called, I always forget, but Deep Blob or whatever they call it, and the GCS storage tiers as well. Again, we get it, right? There really is footage where you're only going to touch it once in a blue moon, put it there. What we're saying is, at a storage level, at a storage level, not a media asset manager level that's potentially more expensive, at a storage level, make sure you know where you've put, what you've put and where, and also
Mm-hmm.
that you have a nice interface to get at stuff so that, you are not delaying putting up the shelves because every time you go to the bottom drawer, you have to empty out everything.
Mm. No, absolutely. So for anybody thinking about implementing or integrating a modern storage solution into their existing media workflow that already has LTO in there as well, what would be your kind of practical tips and recommendations on that transition?
Use the right tool for the job, right?
Mm.
Um, the sort of the great irony, of course, is that I sometimes think of it as a bit like vans, right? The biggest van you have, the long wheelbase transit, right? With the souped up engine, it will always fit anything you want to put in it, yeah. And it will take anything anywhere you want to go at great pace, yeah. Um, but it's going to consume more petrol. It's takes a lot of space to park. It's not the right tool for the job. And what I'm trying to compare that to in that slightly torturous analogy is nearline or really high performance storage, right? You don't want to be using your highly performant edit capable storage, yeah, and find that all you're doing is sharing files into it and sharing files out of it. You bought that performance, that storage to edit from it, to do graphical work from it. You bought that storage to do After Effects style works on it. You don't want to be saying, well, actually 70% of that drive is taken up just because I want a high speed transfer in and a high speed transfer out, right? You are using the very best van you have, right, to shift around scrap, if you like. Yeah. What By the same token, if you go straight from your highest performance storage into your LTO, yeah, you're then potentially having to move stuff back from the LTO into your high performance stuff to move it, right? And then you're just adding time to move it in and then time to move it out, right? And that's something of a nightmare. Have the right tool for the job. What we would say is that really look at your workflows, really look at what you're doing, work out when you need the high performance van, work out when you need the little zippy van that can just be used to travel around with your product, right? And then work out where you want to stick stuff in the knackered old warehouse, right? That you never go to. It's a torturous analogy, but my point is have the right tools for the job. Just because a really good thing can do lots of things doesn't mean that's why you bought it. So from our
Mm.
perspective, we would say editing, all of the high speed, high needed functions, absolutely put those on your performance storage layer. You have to, right? The more workaday stuff, yeah, the more, should we say, functional, the slightly more boring stuff, not the whiz bang stuff, the transcoding, for example, the moving of assets in, the sharing of assets in, the sharing of assets out, the distribution of assets. That's where our object storage sits. Yeah. It's not the flashy
Mhm.
stuff, but it is saying, I want to share in, I want to share out, I want to track my asset, I want to register the metadata across the asset, I want to run analysis across the asset, for example. We're fast enough for you to AI across the top of it. Don't say, well, I need to do more than just have this asset sitting there. I'll stick it on the best performing layer, have a secondary layer which is more cost effective, if not as cheap as LTO, and do the bulk of your workaday boring jobs on that. Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then when you're really sure that this thing, this whatever this asset is, you're not going to touch it again for a long while. It's been delivered to as many customers as it's going to get delivered to for a while. That's when you stick it in the warehouse that is LTO. Yeah. And a lot of companies, they just go, I've got performant, I've got LTO, I've got performant, I've got LTO, and they're just losing time around the edges, you know. And that planning is the core part. And we look, we get it, right? You as a customer or you as an opportunity or whatever else, you didn't get into making documentaries about nature, yeah, because you really want to spend all day writing on a whiteboard about which type of storage tier you're going to put the video into, right? That's nerds like me that enjoy things like that, right? The good news is myself and another bunch of nerds come with the package, so you don't really have to do it yourself. We'll do it for you, right? But my
Yeah.
my point I'm driving at is it does bear thinking about. And it will, and this is where I think it's crucial, it will ultimately make you more productive if you spend a bit of time thinking about it at the top. And that goes back to, again, sorry, all of my torturous analogies today, but that goes back to the fact that you always put off the job where you can't, where you know it's going to be a pain to do, right? Whereas if you feel confident that at any given time you can lay your hands on what you need in a fair, reasonable manner without having to wade through however many sub layers of a MAM to recall or whatever else, then you will think, hey, do you know what? Maybe I'll try and find that clip that would make this sizzle reel really pop. Yeah. Maybe I will actually, find all the instances of, let's say you've run object detection AI across it. I'll find every single Coke can and do silly little montage and get that on Instagram social to drive people back to it. And it's that granularity where you will unlock creativity, yeah, if you just remove the practical boundaries, and those practical boundaries are more affecting than you think, I would say.
Yeah. No, agreed. Absolutely. So just to summarize, the sort of key points, or the key takeaways from today's podcast. We recognize that LTO does have its place in an organization's media workflow. But I guess in terms of what you need that content for, if if it's recognized that you need a more modern storage solution, if you look to monetize your content, you need quick access, then the key points is to really make sure that you map out what your requirements are, and make a good solid plan. And of course, with modern storage solutions, you've got instant access to your content from anywhere at any time. There's tools out there which help you subclip your content. You can search for it using metadata, and it's a far more efficient use of your time. So yeah, no, it's been a really good discussion today, George. Thank you.
It's good.
And I do want to mention that we will be at IBC next month.
We will.
So we've got a booth in Hall 7.D18, and George will be there demoing Object Matrix with Vision and also with our AI solution. So please, book it if you want to pre-book an appointment, or if you want to come along and have a coffee with us and a chat, please do so. But yeah, for now, thank you so much, George, for joining us on our latest podcast, and we look forward to hearing feedback if you've got any comments, or if you like and share.
Like, share. Absolutely.
Like and share and subscribe. Well, thanks very much, George. And thank you to all of our listeners for listening to our latest episode.